Very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Harish from the SBF team. Welcome to Cost-Effective Cybersecurity Strategies for SMEs webinar, jointly organized by Responsible Cyber, SGTech, and SBF. Before we begin with the program, we'd like to share some house rules. No recording and sharing of the content outside of this webinar is allowed unless the information is available publicly. Also, the chat function has been disabled. If you encounter any audio-visual issues, please check your connection. If necessary, you may leave and re-enter the webinar. If you have any questions, please submit them via the Q&A panel function on Zoom. Also, we are pleased to share with you that there will be a poll during the webinar, and there are $30 eCapita vouchers to be won by 10 respondents. If you're interested to win the eCapita voucher, we strongly encourage you to respond to the poll. Please also take note that you will be giving consent to Responsible Cyber to reach out to you after the webinar, should you choose to respond to the poll questions. We'll share your contact details with Responsible Cyber after this webinar. And to kick off this afternoon's program, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Mr. Dutch Un, Chair of SGTech Cybersecurity Chapter, to deliver the welcome address. Mr. Dutch, please. Good afternoon to you.
Thank you, Harish. Hope guys can you hear me. Good afternoon. I'm Dutch, the Chair of SGTech Cybersecurity Chapter, and my full-time role is the CEO and co-founder of iSpring Innovation. It's great to see you all, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today webinar on cost-effective cybersecurity strategies for SMEs. In today's session, you will gain valuable insight from our speaker from Responsible Cyber. As today, SMEs are generally thought of as easy target than the larger organization, which also render access to the latter. However, the majority of SMEs that suffer an incident experience loss of some kind, a most common one, which is loss of customer data. Although this loss may not be immediate, but this will create a negative implication for customers' trust and the business. To address such risks, SMEs need to start by understanding cyber risks based on their own business and prioritize valuable cost-effective measures that will manage and reduce the probability of a cyber attack. At the same time, they must also be ready to respond and recover what happens or something occurs. All right, to all old friends and existing members of SGTech, it is nice to have you with us again. To our new friends unfamiliar with what SGTech does, let me give you a brief introduction. SGTech is a premium trade association set up to represent and champion the interests of the tech industry in Singapore. Within the rapidly evolving technology landscape, SGTech strives to create an ecosystem that anticipates trends and develop sustainable initiatives to strengthen and grow the industry. Currently, we have more than 1,000 members ranging from innovative startups, vibrant small and medium-sized enterprises to top MNCs, whom are we representing and articulating any technology industrial concern to relevant authority and stakeholder. SGTech do strive to create an ecosystem that to strengthen the community and help the ICT industry to grow. SGTech strive to add active voice for the tech industry by actively and responsibly advocating for change, while remaining a trusted and respected partner of the government. SGTech contribute to tech industry growth and transformation through national programs and initiatives that drive and enhance the Singapore economy. There's three key roles that what we are doing. A business enabler. As a neutral platform and aggregator for the tech industry, where various platforms that create opportunities for our members. A responsible voice. We run sessions with various government industry to provide feedbacks and give suggestions on how we can help with each other. As for industry insight, we provide knowledge and intel on updates and news so that the member will be more aware of the rapid changes that they can adapt with quickly. As to coordinate the needs of the subsector within the ITC space, we have formed industry chapters and committees to support strategic and emerging sector. We have classified our chapters into tech verticals and non-tech horizontal. Under the tech verticals, we have AI, high-performance computing chapters, cloud and data, cybersecurity, which are here today, and for non-tech horizontal, we have digital transformation chapter, Singapore enterprise, and smart nation chapter. Company that join SGTech as a member can choose which chapter they prefer to be involved. Each chapter will plan activities, initiative to engage their chapter member and the industry. SGTech also spin-off committees that cater to emerging industry needs. For example, 123 Jumpstart Committee cater to the young startup companies. Gaming and education technology are gaining traction. We also formed these two committees to cater to the requirements. Other committees are blockchain committees, data center, data protection, digital trust, government procurement, SME Go Digital, sustainability, talent and capability committees. New chapter and committee will be launched in response to the technology industry will continue to grow and needs. If you'd like to know more about SGTech, please write to SGTech Secretariat at membership@sgtech.org.sg. I repeat, membership@sgtech.org.sg. Okay, I also like to thank our partner, Responsible Cyber, SBF Singapore Business Federation, and SMF Singapore Manufacturing Federation for supporting this webinar. I hope that you'll find this information helpful for your organization. I wish you a fruitful webinar ahead. Thank you, and over to you, Harish.
Thank you, Dutch, for the well-rounded welcome address. We shall now dive deeper into this afternoon's program with Dr. Magda Shelley, co-founder of Responsible Cyber, to take us through cost-effective cybersecurity strategies for SMEs. Dr. Magda, please.
Good afternoon, Harish. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much, Dutch, as well, for setting the scene. And good afternoon again for all our attendees. I'm excited today to have this opportunity to give you and share with you some practical insights and takeaway to make sure that you build a cyber resilient business. Now I'm conscious of time, so I need to share with you this knowledge within only 20 minutes, and I will do my best. However, know that there's much more into the cybersecurity world that could be very interesting for you to learn. But before that, let me just make sure that we agree, hopefully, that this webinar will not be boring. So that will bring you a lot of energy. And why is that, or how I will try to achieve it? By ensuring that not only I share some lessons learned and my own experience, but as well that I provide you some, as I mentioned, practical aspects that you can implement very quickly. And this practical experience comes from my background, where I have worked and provided advisory service to many companies, from the small ones, as my own is as well, an SME, so I can relate, to the bigger ones that are operating across the world with massive cybersecurity capabilities. Now, no matter of the size of the company, cyber risk is a challenge and at the same time a risk for all businesses, no matter of the size, but no matter as well of the industry. And like I mentioned, even for my company that is an SME, we need as well to consider cyber risk as one of our main risks and address it as a cybersecurity company. Now, why does it happen, and why actually today there is this massive interest around cyber risk. Before jumping into the future, let me just mention that today, everything that we do and every aspect of our life depends on technology or depends on basically data and the internet. And the data and the internet allow us not only to exchange in a very convenient way, however, it as well brings by itself security challenges. The reason being is because let's start and be very conscious of one extremely important fundamental. The internet does not come with security by design. Today, you look at me, you think I'm Magda, but look at this, a few seconds after, I'm someone else and I can be anyone behind the screen. Now that I showed you that, let's even further understand the dependency on the technology. We are not only having businesses operating very, very actually heavily, but as well, we are further increasing our overall profiles. And with the increase of the adoption of technology, we see smart drones, artificial intelligence. We can even think about literally having smart lenses that we can wear, showing us the virtual reality directly from the way of how we look at the world. And before we go further and understand this disruption and dependency on technology, let me ask you first a question through a poll that we're going to display on the screen and try to understand if today, as a business owner or as an employee within an SME or within your organization, have you had the opportunity to identify and quantify cyber risk? I hope you can see the poll. Yes. So please do not hesitate to participate. We will use as well this opportunity to share a few gifts and vouchers at the end. I can see that we are having a mix of responses, yes, no, and maybe. Very interesting. Let's give it a few more minutes, and please, I definitely encourage everyone to participate, even if it is just a very simple question, but it is an extremely important question nowadays for companies. Few minutes more. Okay. We can see that we have actually many responses that are saying maybe. A good point, maybe, because indeed cyber risk quantification might mean a lot, and especially it has been used in cybersecurity previously in, I would say, a very basic way. So let me come back to that in a bit. Let's take a step back and understand what is cyber risk. And the first misconception that relates to cybersecurity is that it is all technical. It is not the case. Cyber risk is a business risk that relates to your company providing activities, services, products to your customers, operating in an environment and generating revenue. Now, because of the dependency on technology that I mentioned, this particular risk that previously we had traditional as financial, operational risk, today is shifting more and more towards cyber risk. Because if tomorrow your company doesn't have access to technology, you are unable to continue provide activities or sell products to your customers. And therefore, you are losing revenue as a business. So let's forget about the technical stuff and understand that one, it is not all about technical concept. It is about the disruption of technology that might eventually lead to a complete interruption of your business activities, paralysis of your activities, and eventually a data breach. But I will show you a little bit further. Now, the other two aspects that are very important is that 100% security does not exist. As any other risk in business, there is no 100% assurance. And the same applies in cybersecurity. So whenever you hear an advertisement that says this is the magical solution allowing you to achieve 100% security, that is not true. Every single technology has a potential new profile and therefore brings in additional cyber risk to your organization. So how does a company start a journey in understanding cyber risk? Is first of all, you need to very clearly understand where is your business or where are your business critical activities? Where are your business most important revenue generated? When you have that visibility and you understand how your business is today dependent on technology for those activities, you can then try to understand what would be the assets that can be affected and how eventually a cyber attack that can happen might disrupt or again lead your business to be a victim or become a victim of a cyber attack. So why it's important to start by identifying your business most important activity is because you will not be able as an SME to buy every single solution to address your risk. You will need to prioritize. And that prioritization for you as a small organization needs to start addressing what is the most critical activity for you that's generating business and revenue again. Now, when you have that visibility and you, for example, look at, okay, I have actually my main activity is our e-commerce website. If that e-commerce website is down, I'm going to lose money or revenue. Then you focus very carefully and in priority on your e-commerce website. If you are actually selling, for example, offline, but today you're working remotely and your employees need to communicate with their clients over email, you need to focus on that, ensuring that your employees are able to communicate with your customers at all times and they're able to protect your customers' data, etc. Now the scenarios are various. However, again, this is extremely important. You cannot achieve resilience without focusing on the main specific prioritized scenarios that are relevant for your business. When you have that identification achieved, you can then try to work with your IT and cybersecurity, if you have a cybersecurity team, to understand how a cyber attack might disrupt your activities for that particular scenario, or how a cyber attack might lead to a data breach. In both case scenarios, there are three potential, I would say, weaknesses that can be exploited or used by cyber criminals. The first one relates to a weakness in people. Yes, you heard me correctly. It's not a weakness actually in technology. It is a weakness in people. If someone clicks on a link, if someone opens an attachment that is malicious, that is the responsibility of the person that clicked on that particular malicious either link or attachment. The IT or any technical solution might not be able to detect that malicious attachment or file 100%. It might fail, especially with the sophisticated attacks. So first, remember a weakness in people. The second is a weakness in process, which very often as well is completely, I would say, forgotten or not taken care of. If a company or your accounting department receives an email from a vendor asking you to pay a specific invoice to a new banking account, and the accounting department proceeds with that payment without verifying if that request is legitimate, that is a weakness in process, not in technology. And remember, behind a screen or behind that email, it can be anyone, including some virtual, actually inexistent person. And the vendor or the current partner that you're working on with might be compromised, and therefore that email might be completely fake. So the second one is a weakness in process. The third one, which is actually the most popular, is the weakness in technology. Now, the weakness in technology most commonly as well happens because of a weakness in process, but I will come back to that. Remember those 3 points. As a cybersecurity professional, I am actually saying to you that technology doesn't come with security by default, and that you need to consider weaknesses within your organization that relate to people and process. Now, it is important to consider those because those weaknesses are used by cyber criminals or malicious hackers to compromise your company. They might compromise your company to ask you for a ransom. They might compromise your company to actually steal some intellectual property, customer data, or other information that might be valuable for them, for those malicious criminals. And the scenarios that might happen and how to protect your companies are various. So today, of course, within the very short amount of time, we're not able to see everything, but let me actually make sure that your imagination goes very, very far and you understand that the consequences of a cyber attack is not just a website that is not working. It's not just your IT server that stopped to providing the services. It might as well be much more harm and financial cost to your organization. So in order to show you more about those scenarios, let's actually, again, remind everyone what is a cyber risk. A cyber risk is a probability of loss or impact as well to your company resulting from a cyber attack or a data breach. Both can happen at the same time, but both can as well happen independently. And for example, in organization, because of those weaknesses across people, process, and technology, might not be able to work for several days in a row, not even while they have a backup in place. For example, in the latest major ransomware attack, which I'm sure you have heard of, companies were not able to recover operation for many, many days. And that is a real problem. So in order to address it again, it is critical to, one, identify those scenarios that will help you to communicate with other business stakeholders, with your CEO, with, for example, the CFO, and understand as well how to effectively and most cost efficiently achieve cybersecurity controls. As you can see in this particular slide that I'm sharing, I am talking about cyber risk management. And when you identify your scenarios, you can then quantify those scenarios based on the potential losses, financial losses. For example, if your business is not able to function for 16 or 10 days, that's a major financial loss. You can actually associate that loss with the specific cyber scenario and then decide, what should I do to manage that cyber risk? Should I treat it with additional controls? Those controls might be across people, process, and or technology. Should I treat it and transfer it as well because I'm still not happy with the result and I'm still worried about the potential financial losses afterwards? Or should I just stop the activity, which is very rare, but sometimes it can happen? Those choices all depend on your understanding of those scenarios and the potential consequences. And as I have seen your answers, a lot of you mentioned that actually you maybe are doing cyber risk quantification. But cyber risk quantification is not about telling you your cyber risk is 4 or 5. It's about telling you your specific cyber risk scenarios might lead to a potential loss of $100,000, for example, with the costs that involve cost of recovery, cost of forensics investigation, cost of IT, cost of communication, cost of legal, and many more additional costs that are not related to IT, but to your business. And the quantification aspect is actually helping you to achieve that. To achieve that efficiently, you need to be very clear after identifying those scenarios, what are the consequences? And as you can see until now, I haven't focused on the technical cyber attack because that is something that your IT or cybersecurity support company can provide you. What you can provide is to understand if you are unable to continue your activities, how much impact does that have on your business? And especially how much money you might be losing, because that is very critical. Now, when you have that visibility, it means that you will be able to understand that for a specific scenario, like in this slide, you might be actually losing a lot of money. For example, even up to 1 million for certain companies that again include cost of recovery, forensic investigation, legal advice, notification, communication with customers, regulatory fine in case of a data breach involving personal data. Now, the personal data is an aspect that very often is told that that's the only cyber risk for SMEs, but it's not. Again, first of all, remember you store as well, for example, your bank accounts of your employees, but as well, you might be storing other personal data that might be relevant, or you might as well look at scenarios where you are not concerned about the data breach, but you are concerned about disruption of your operations. And those costs, again, can be very, very high because it is a misconception that you can recover within 1 hour or 2 hours. Sometimes it takes actually much longer, especially if you have pretty extensive operations. Now that we have talked about all that, the cyber risk, when it happens, it can lead to many scenarios. For example, in the case of a factory, even production disruption, product recall, when there is a cyber attack that manages to change something within the product that you're delivering, you might need to recall it. Or in the worst case scenario, it can as well lead to physical damage and even literally fire. So now that I made you really understand that there are various scenarios that might be affected by the dependency on technology, I want you to remember that cyber security is not possible to achieve at 100%. There is always a residual risk, and that residual risk can be managed either with additional security controls or with what we call a cyber insurance or cyber risk transfer. The cyber insurance helps you to manage the financial losses with reimbursement, and a very important point, the support with incident response team, because as a smaller organization, you might not have the right resources. I will be happy to share that with you further after the webinar, and you will receive as well as supporting documents. But as the time is running, let me just recap. Cyber risk can not only lead to a complete disruption of operation, no matter of the industry, but can lead as well to even physical damage. For example, a factory completely stopped or having to replace equipment. It can as well stop your activities that are dependent on technology. And therefore, that's where you need to identify the scenarios, not only the exposures, the scenarios. Understand the company's weaknesses across people, process, and technology, and they very clearly try to quantify the impact and consequences of those scenarios. And most of the time, cyber attacks as well do not happen because they are sophisticated attacks, and the cyber criminals are smarter than the good guys every time. It is not the case. Most of the time, cyber attacks happen because us companies like my company or other small companies do not do the right things, and they actually miss on the fundamentals. So what can you do as a company, and how can you start or continue your cybersecurity journey? Let's be clear. We need to understand the fundamentals that I've shared for around many minutes now, but you need to implement certain controls that will help you to treat those cyber risks very effectively. But I'm not going to give you a magic checklist because that doesn't exist. I'm going to share with you areas or controls that, if implemented, will certainly help you to reduce your cyber risk tremendously. And for that, I will start by mentioning NIST. NIST is a framework that provides more than 1,000 controls for companies to implement. Yes, you heard that right, 1,000 controls. So I'm not going to tell you today, as a company, you need to implement them all. I'm going to just focus on the ones that will reduce, as I mentioned, the probability and the impact of a cyber attack happening on your company. Because it will happen, it happens all the time, but what changes is the consequences. So first, NIST allows you or guides you through identification of the process that you need to implement, the protection and the controls that are effective around people, process, and technology. It guides you through the detection, response, and recovery. And that's where, in order to achieve that, you can use and support yourself with our tool, Immune, which we will provide to all attendees today that are interested for free, as mentioned in the webinar, to be able to use it. The tool allows you to identify your technical exposures and try to understand where are your weaknesses, not only within the technical environment, but as well around the process. And it provides you as well some awareness content, so you address the weakness with the people. The second aspect as well that is very important for you to consider is to very clearly understand your assets. Now, within the platform, you can check and discover any emails that have been used, websites, or any other assets that is digital assets available on the internet. But the identification of your exposures, of your assets, is a critical first step when you start and continue a cybersecurity journey. This helps you to very clearly understand if they are technical exposures that can be used by cyber criminals to compromise your company. After the identification of the technical exposures, as well as the weaknesses, as I mentioned, in processes and eventually people, we generate, or we help you identify your scenarios. What can happen to your business leading to a specific financial loss, and how are you able to treat it and transfer it, depending on what? On your risk appetite. Because one company is happy to lose 7 million, the other one will not be happy to lose 7 million, and even 1 million will be too much. So the second step after understanding your assets and your exposures is to very clearly have a list of scenarios and cyber risk scenarios where you can take action, and you can take action effectively and especially cost effectively. So you will need to implement controls. And those controls to protect your asset and treat of cyber risk, as I mentioned, can be up even to 1,000 controls. So I'm not going to tell you you need to implement those, but you need to consider those specific 3 controls that are extremely important. The first one, two-factor authentication. The code that you receive on, for example, over SMS or through a mobile application. And this is in addition of your password when you log into the website. Extremely effective, and a lot of cyber attacks have been managed because of this security controls. So do not underestimate the power of that. It's very effective and it's free. Especially remember, it's free. You can activate it everywhere. Yahoo has it. Your social media have it. Your Google account have it. So activate two-factor authentication. The second one, update your software, which is something as well that people do not realize. It's most of the time free. And when you update your laptop or update your mobile phone, you're actually decreasing the probability of having a vulnerable device that can be exploited by cyber criminals. And then lastly, cyber awareness. Read and share about the latest cyber crimes or phishing attacks. For example, there have been a lot of scams over WhatsApp recently. Yes, over WhatsApp, where literally two-factor authentication codes have been shared, or just for example, friend of colleagues' account have been hacked and used to compromise the company itself. So those are 3 controls, not 1,000. They're very effective, will reduce your risks of being compromised. In no way I'm telling you that this is the magical solution. It is actually the most common reason why companies are compromised. So by activating two-factor authentication and by ensuring that your devices are updated at all times, you are reducing that probability. And of course, making sure that all of those recommendations and controls are documented within policies. So we provide as well with them our platform templates that you can use for free to ensure that you have the right support, as well as I mentioned, the cyber awareness support. And you can monitor your controls. So you have implemented, for example, 3, you can continue your journey and implement additional controls. Perhaps you would like to aim for the Cyber Essential mark that has been just announced by Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, or you are aiming for an ISO certification. You can continue using and monitoring our platform to add additional controls depending on your end goal and what will help your business to get new clients, because at the end, that is also very important. So if you're able to provide that assessment, companies will be very, very happy. So identification of your most important assets, protection of those assets, detection and response is very important as well, as there's no 100% story security, and you might always be compromised. So you need to be able to see if there's anything suspicious happening within your environment. And that means alerts everywhere. Google, Yahoo, Microsoft Office allows you to receive, again, free of charge alerts. So if someone is trying to log in somewhere, you can actually address that. And lastly, recovering with a backup. Ensure that you have a backup actually available that is providing you the support in case of major cyber attack to recover. And now, of course, I'm conscious about the time. I think I overran, so I will just close by saying that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. The same applies for the cloud shared responsibility. So do not believe that there will be someone taking care of the security at your place. You need to take care of the security from your own perspective, understand how dependent you are on technology and how technology disruption might lead to major consequences. So we will be sharing with you all the details about Immune, our platform. I'm not here to sell you just the platform. I'm here actually to help you manage your cyber risk and get towards a better journey into cyber resilience. So thank you very much. Do not hesitate to ask us any question, the Q&A, and back to you, Harish.
Thank you, Dr. Magda, for that insightful sharing. We have now come to the panel discussion with the Q&A open to the floor. To moderate this session, I would like to invite Mr. Ken So, Executive Committee Member from SGTech Cybersecurity Chapter. Over to you, Ken.
Thank you, Harris. Yes, I'm Ken here. I'm from the ESCO of Cybersecurity Chapter in SGTech, as Harris mentioned. Of course, I have a day job I run the cybersecurity consulting outfit named Athena Dynamics under the BH Global Group. Right. I think first and foremost, thanks to everybody spending this afternoon time with all of us. I believe it's time well spent looking at the content, the rich content, and the actionable items that Dr. Magda actually shared. I personally find it very useful and it's directly relevant and pertinent to the existing landscape. All right, so what I mean by a fair share of all this educating, and we still have the passion very strong to engage the SME. Well, some of the tauges, the SME tauges, when you engage them, they will say like, I'm not a bank, why should I worry about this, things like that. And I share with many, one encounter is that one well-accomplished SME tauge who drives a Lamborghini that say that $3,000 firewall is expensive, that sort of thing. So it's okay. We are still carrying on with our passion. And I think with what Magda has shared, I think I have some interesting question, hope not too difficult for Magda. I believe nothing is too difficult for her. She's an expert in this area. I think the first one is, every time we talk about technical thing with the business people, especially the tauge, they probably get frightened or they frown, don't tell me all this technical thing. But maybe when we say something related more towards business, it will be closer to their heart. Things like maybe insurance, like Magda mentioned, or maybe the legal perspective, because they are used to legal and insurance in businesses, right? Okay, so maybe the first question is, how is the best way to communicate with the SME from this legal perspective, and what's the best way then we can advise them to actually comply with the legal framework of cyber security?
Thank you very much, Ken, for this question. I certainly think that there is a common misconception around compliance with legal frameworks around, within the SME ecosystem. First of all, I notice that very often SMEs forget that they have as well personal data of the employees. So now PDPA doesn't regulate the business contact information. However, as an SME, you have NRIC numbers, you have PIN numbers, you have bank account numbers, and those need to be protected. So you need to ensure that you put in place the right security controls to protect that data that is stored where? Within the technology, right? Either on laptop, either on the cloud, or either within that particular environment that is not any more paper. And therefore, again, it's very important first to understand that. The second point, whenever you are compliant with regulations like PDPA or the new Cyber Essential Mark by CSA, you're actually increasing an opportunity for you as a business to work with bigger organizations, to create more partnerships, because more and more companies nowadays are doing what we call a third-party assessment. So there is no way that a company can work with a big other client if that company doesn't have at least some fundamentals and a good cybersecurity program. And it is achievable. Again, it's not about buying a $5,000 firewall. It's about really focusing on what matters. How can I understand my cyber risk? How can I manage it in a way that is effective financially? For example, I don't have my extensive cybersecurity team. I will try to read a little bit, implement a few controls that are most effective, and then I can take a cyber insurance that helps me with the incident response when it happens, with the cash flow as well, because if I need to pay for an investigation that is required, for example, in certain cases for MAS regulated companies, it might be expensive for me. So we look at it from, again, something that is feasible. Now, I think the biggest misconception is, again, that all those security controls are very expensive, but two-factor authentication is free. Updating your laptop or your iPhone is free. So no matter, what kind of company you meet and the marketing that you hear, if you don't do that, then there's no magical solution that will help you to protect your company from possible cyber attacks.
Thank you, Magda. That's very practical advice. I think the SME would be well benefited. They are also directly actionable. I think just now I mentioned about the second thing is insurance, right? So I mean, in business, naturally they will have bought insurance, but of course, cyber insurance is it's not totally new, but it's new in the maybe the last decade or so. And of course, we know like last year there are so many ransom attacks, and I run IT operation ops at the group level as well. And when I come back to renew my cyber insurance, wow, I see the premium, like some of them is 2 times more. I got a rude shock. Some even quit, the industry. But I can see that your platform, which is very interesting, that offer a dynamic portfolio of the security posture that can help in insurance, probably even lower down insurance premium. I'm not sure. So coming back to this insurance, I think it's also another tool that I think we can use to engage the SME in the right protocol, closer to their heart. And so in this context, I think it's very common to ask people like us that, so is it really useful, cyber insurance? And then does it cover all my risks? This type of question. And we would certainly like to hear your view on all this.
Thank you, Ken. I think it's a very important question and a very relevant nowadays. First of all, let's make it very, very clear. Cyber insurance is not a replacement of cybersecurity controls. Actually, even further, if a company doesn't have anything around cybersecurity, no insurance will accept to underwrite that risk because they know that tomorrow you're going to be hacked. So it's basically like, insuring a company that will raise a claim a week after. So today they go through an in-depth assessment of the company's security controls. But cyber insurance, as I mentioned, has 2 very, very relevant points for an SME. The first and the most important in my view is the incident response support. Because let me ask all our audience today and make them think, what do you do if you have an incident tomorrow? Do you know how to investigate? Do you know what are your legal, details and compliance requirements? You probably don't, especially if you don't have an extensive team. So cyber insurance have partners that can help to achieve that and support you when a breach or a cyber attack happens. The second one, which can be as well very important, depends probably as well of the impact of the cyber attack and how long you have been out of business. But it's of course the reimbursement of costs. So for example, an average ransomware attack might lead to a business being not able to operate for 16 days. Every day that your business is not working, imagine how much money you're losing and how much revenue you're losing. So cyber insurance can as well reimburse the profit loss, which I find amazing. And by the way, I'm not selling cyber insurance, so it's just for you. I really believe in that product. I think it's very valuable, especially for smaller companies, for those 2 reasons. But I would like as well to mention that for anyone considering cyber insurance, it's very important to look at the coverage, including the ransomware, because sometimes it's actually either on exclusion because the ransom amounts have been so high, even up to $40 and $50 million for bigger companies in Asia, only the ransom, and also to look at social engineering attacks. I mentioned paying, for example, fake invoices. That might be in some cases not covered within the cyber insurance, but more covered within the commercial crime policy. So ask the questions that are relevant for the business itself, for your business, your activities, and what are you concerned about. But in short, yes, it's very relevant, and especially for SMEs, I think even more than bigger companies, because bigger companies have bigger resources and more money. So if they lose a lot of money, they can still recover. A small company might actually go bankrupt.
Sure. Thank you for articulating the relevance of cyber security, this insurance. I think in a nutshell, although it can't cover everything, but it's definitely an essential thing, necessary for SME also to think about it as a fallback in case something happens. So I have a last question is that because we have been talking about risk, so much about risk, right? So then we come to naturally risk assessment. So the natural question then is how often do I need to assess a risk? Is it once every quarter or once every year? Is it sufficient? Maybe we get some view from you as well on this.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. And I think this question is actually very relevant as well to the question in the Q&A that relates of how do we need to start managing cyber risk, and should we start with the risk assessment and quantification? In my view, of course, that the best way is to ensure that you start with assessing your risks. If not, you're going to implement perhaps controls or buy tools that are not relevant for your own cyber risk. So having those scenarios first written very clearly, what's important for your business, then linking them to the weaknesses within your current business, and then and only then identifying the controls that will address those weaknesses, and therefore you're able to treat those cyber risks. Now, the quantification and the choice of controls, this is something that either you can do manually. We provide that within our platform, so I encourage you to use it as well as part of that and to reach out. We generate with our in-house built algorithm a quantification that is not only based on your revenue, but your size, your industry, as well as other factors like the cost involved into recovery. And then we tell you what are the controls that you can implement. We always prioritize the free ones. Obviously, you want the best and the biggest return on investment. And for that, some of the controls, like, for example, two-factor authentication for SMEs might be completely free. It's not the case for bigger companies where they need to buy licenses. So all that is provided. Now, if you do it manually, that means that you need to understand what is your risk appetite. If you're fine to lose, for example, $2,000, then and your risk is $2,000, then you might not do anything. But if you are not fine with that, you need to find controls that you can implement that will reduce cyber risk and that are cost effective. So that means that their cost needs to be lower than $2,000. If not, that doesn't make sense. You will not protect your business by buying something that is more expensive than the potential losses themselves. And that's how we calculate it. Now, again, the quantification itself requires a little bit more understanding of your business. So there are some frameworks and standards that are used for that. We have our own model, and it all comes down to starting by the scenario and understanding the impacts on the business impact analysis beyond the IT, but as well and mostly around the activities of the business operations.
Thank you, Magna, for sharing with us in a nutshell, important balance between cost and benefit, and seeing this in a perspective and approach this in the right way. So before we wrap up this fireside chat, I think let's see the Q&A portion. There's a question, but it was mentioned that this question has been answered live, right? So maybe, well, we have almost like 50 attendees today. I think it's very well received. Please feel free to, the floor is open. Please feel free to ask questions. Feel free to type into the Q&A section of the Zoom platform. Yeah, so far it's still quiet.
Yes, sorry, Ken. I would like just to add and mention that, again, the objective is to help the companies and our attendees start their journey. So I encourage them to actually reach out to me, to Responsible Cyber. We'll continue and we reach out to everyone as well. You can try and already register through our platform, getimmune.com. I have sent you the link. It is providing a lot of features that helps you to manage your cyber risk, but also if you are interested to use it, which is a very good as well tool for compliance reasons. I mentioned ISO 27000, but it helps you to monitor that. You can use policy templates, you can use a lot of things. Reach out to get your voucher to enroll you for a full professional tier, as we have several tiers, and you will be able as well to have or get 1 hour of support from our side to go through any other questions or very much more specifics, not only about the platform itself, but cybersecurity in general.
Thank you. I think since there's no further questions from the audience, let's wrap up this. But before that, usually I would like to wrap up with a practical takeaway from the speaker, because they walk away and they can use it practically back in the shop. I think it's very useful for everybody. So Magna, do you think what is the single takeaway most important for all the SME today?
I think the one takeaway that I would like everyone to remember is today our lives are based on technology. So we cannot assume that someone else will take care of our security the same way as we take care of our security in the physical world. Our world today is mixed between physical and digital, and it's becoming more and more digital, which means that we need to take care of our own safety in that digital world, which is cybersecurity. So I let everyone go away from the webinar thinking about how to build a cyber intuition with their own shared responsibility to protect themselves, their families and loved ones, and their businesses.
Sure, thank you. Let's start thinking hard with this wisdom. I think we protect ourselves well, not only from COVID-19, right? I mean, the digital side is getting complex as well nowadays. All right. Thank you very much, Ahis, and thank you everyone for attending our this this plenary. And probably over back to you, Ahis. Yeah.
Thank you, Ken and Magda. Once again, our warm appreciation goes out to Dr. Magda, Mr. Ken, and Mr. Dutch for taking us through an enriching afternoon. To see this QR code, if you could scan this QR code to let us know your thoughts and feedback, comments of this afternoon's webinar. Also, we wish you a very successful transformation and wish you to stay cyber secured as you uphold a very successful digital transformation ahead. On that note, I'm signing off as myself, Harish, together with our panelists for this afternoon. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, guys.